Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Blackfish interview. I'm really excited to introduce you all to Barbara Black and Lynda Ater, who is going to tell us a little bit more about their work and their experience at Blackfish. So let's just get right to it. Barbara, you want to go first and tell us more about yourself and your connection with the gallery?
Sure. When I was in graduate school, I was taking printmaking, and the printmaking instructor got the idea of making a collective art gallery, and another student in another grad student. So we got more people, and we had about 12. Artists that we invited to join us. There were 12 of us all together, and we met once a week for a year, I believe. And then we started the gallery in February of 1979. And the name of it, we were looking for fun names, and we were putting all kinds of names together like dentists and lawyers do. And the one that amused them the most for the corporation, this was before was Barbara Black and Julia Fish. So it became Blackfish, but that was to be only the corporate name. But by 6 months later, when we found our actual space and opened in February of '79, that name had stuck. So that's how the name happened. And we're in our 42nd year. And there are 3 original members: myself, Paul Missel, Stephen Soyle, and then Kanataka was just coming out of grad school, and I think he joined right about the time I think he was in our first show. And that's how it happened, and I love it.
That's awesome. It's so good to hear the history. And yeah. So Lynda, tell us how you got connected with Blackfish, how you came on board.
Well, I think a couple of things. One is my friendship with Barbara, which is longer lived than Blackfish itself, and or right about that length of time. My history is that I'm a scientist as well as an artist, and so I worked as a clinical laboratory scientist, and then went to art school because I always wanted to do art school. So I'd always be drawing and taking classes at the museum art school, and it turned out that Barbara was there, and actually she taught my daughter. And then we found out later that we were at a workplace, and she was there and I was there, and so we met there again. And that was in 1979, just when you were starting your the gallery, Barbara.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, that's when it was.
Yeah, we were up on Pill Hill.
Yeah, on Pill Hill. And so up at the medical school. And so it took me, I was working full time, but it also at the laboratory, but it took me, about after having accrued quite a few credits from my classes from before, it still took me 8 years part-time to get through PNCA. But what a great time. It was just the best possible time of my life, really. And so then when I graduated, it turns out I was one of the students chosen by the faculty to be a show at the Blackfish student, the graduate show, Blackfish graduate show.
Recent graduate show, yes.
Yeah, in 2001. So that was very exciting. And I never wanted to be a part of a commercial gallery. I always loved the idea of, Barbara and her Blackfish group. So I just applied right away and got in. And so, yeah. And that was about 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember how long it was.
I know, it's a long time, isn't it?
Yeah. And like you, I really enjoyed my years at what's called Pacific Northwest College of Art, but I went there much earlier than you, and it was called the Museum Art School, and it was And in fact, that time is kind of going to be on PBS tomorrow at
Really?
Oh,
11:30 a.m. It's called Portland Art Makers. And so it starts back with C.S. Price, early times, but then it comes through with, like, George Johansson is speaking a lot on it, and uh, a lot of instructors I had at that time.
Is it on OPV?
Yes,
Okay,
11:30 tomorrow morning.
at 11:30?
Tomorrow morning. Uh-huh.
Oh, great. Okay.
awesome. Plug for
Good to know.
OPB. So, right now, Blackfish is doing its first ever virtual exhibition. It's so exciting. And all 30 of our members have selected a piece to be in the show. And everybody has been featured. Each day, we're featuring a different artist. And so, Barbara was our feature yesterday, and Lynda was our feature a few days ago. So I'd love it if you guys could tell us more about the pieces that you chose to be in the show.
Oh,
Barbara?
okay. I was somehow I was expecting an image would pop up.
Yeah.
Um, um,
You
well,
guys can go to blackfish.com and check it out on our website, and then you'll see the image that Barbara's telling you about.
yes. Well, it was a piece that came together in kind of an odd way. The way I work is um, partly planned and partly unplanned. If I planned the whole thing out, I would be very bored. I mean, I'm lazy. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't paint it. Uh, and I remember when I was in art school, there was a story, I think I got this right, that when George Brock sat down to his easel, he knew exactly how it was going to look. It was like it was
Barbara.
covered with a thick layer of white dust, and he took his brush off and just brushed it off.
Right.
So I start things and then they change a lot over time. And that's to the painting called Two Birds, I believe that's in the show for me. It's actually two paintings put together. The smaller piece, and there are several different kinds of techniques used, and different media too. So um, I don't know what else I should say about it. Do you have any questions about it?
Well, tell us about the media that you use. I think you use mixed media acrylic. So
Yes, and one of the things I do is I not only use the acrylic in the normal way, which is I use a non-absorbent paper to paint on, and usually, although now I've got canvases underway too. I use a non-absorbent painter so that I can both brush on the acrylic in the normal fashion, but also pour it on. And I think of that as kind of a collaboration with the medium, because usually it's a very thin wash of the pigment, lots of water, and so when I pour areas on and add it with a brush, um, it doesn't look like it's going to look, because the pigment has a mind of its own. So usually the next day I come and then I get the surprise about where the pigments decided to run around and be dark and make edge lines and do things like that and intermingle and mix each other. So I think of it as kind of a collaborative process, and also kind of a way of getting in touch with the unconscious, because I have a very Jungian influenced style of thinking about the inner and outer worlds. My work is both representational and abstract, and that means that my work from piece to piece can look quite different. So this looks different than you may have noticed in the 5 I gave you recently to work with. They're very different, and that's because I allow the unconscious and other imagery to come in. A lot of dream images in my work.
I can tell that for sure. Whenever I look at your work, I feel like it has a very ethereal, dreamlike quality. And it's
Oh,
interesting
good.
to talk about the technique because your paintings look almost like watercolors, and with the quality to it, as you're talking about how it just kind of uh, the colors run and do their own thing and blend into one another. It's amazing.
Um, well, I think it's because they are used like, you can use acrylic just like watercolor. And in fact, you can put a little acrylic medium in watercolor and it'll just look the same. I don't put the acrylic medium in because I want the pigments to run around and do their own thing. And is it okay if I hold up an example of,
Ew, yeah,
let's see, it can, how
Oh
is that?
boy.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it looks
good.
great.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this is a painting from my last uh, show with Angela in the gallery in 2019. But it's small. It's 12 by 16, and I just love it. And it has collage. It has uh, watercolor samples collaged on it. It has all these things happening in it. And I thought, I would really like that large. So part of the reason I showed it is for this next show, which I think will be February. I'm working on a 30 by 40 inch canvas to see if I can, it won't be exact. There will be some, but if I can bring forward some of the color juxtapositions and uh, movements that I loved so in that one.
Wow.
Awesome.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece, Barbara.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites. And the postcards all disappeared, but interesting enough, people bought others. And they didn't buy that one. And I'm kind of glad because it's a real favorite of mine. So
You get to hold on to it. Yeah, that's
now I'm using it to guide me to see if I can do a rather different but related large canvas painting.
awesome. Well, we'll be looking forward to keeping tabs on that and your show in the next year.
Oh, great.
We've gotten, unfortunately, with everything going on with COVID-19, we've had to reschedule a lot of shows. Barbara was supposed to show in May.
May. To this,
But you know what? It gives us time then to see the more things that you're working on. So
that part is fun. Yeah.
yeah. So Lynda, tell us about the piece that you have featured in the virtual show right now online.
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's not a usual piece for me, which is in a way unfortunate in me describing what I have. Usually, I um, I make art and that combines um, abstracted biologic forms with the interaction of color. So color dynamics is, a big deal for me. But in this particular piece, it's black and white on tinted paper. It's charcoal and uh, Conti crayon, white Conti crayon. So these were a set of four that appeared along with the other pieces that were all color related and without any dark and light, any black or white. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a good thing to. And the reason I did it was you could really focus on the forms themselves without the interference of color. So I, at my day job, I looked through a microscope at cell samples from people in the hospital looking for signs of cancer. And I found those cancer cells just really fascinating. They were just something you just never seen before. And thinking, how sad it is that that person has cancer. And in the lab, you do not even you don't have any contact with the patient. And so because I was so interested in the forms, I decided to use those and remove them from the context to a new context, which is paint on canvas. And instead of the work or the cells actually uh, uh, they were about death and dying. And I wanted to change that. So I changed the context, put a paint on canvas, and then made them lively as though they were an entirely different type of cell. Um, uh, so and that's what I usually do, and it usually has to do with color. Color interaction is just a really favorite theme of mine, and but this one is black and white. It's called, I think it's called Reversal 2. I made 4 of them: first reversal, 2, 3, and then last reversal. So I have 3 sections at the top and 3 at the bottom. And the 3 at the top are, there's a cell, another cell of a different type, and then another cell over here. They don't look like cells. They look like simplifications or abstractions of these cells. So they just really look like uh, biomorphic forms. And so I reversed it, call it reversal, because I took the images here and I flipped them over like this for the images on the bottom, and then turned them this way. So, and then those that were black in the upper image were white in the lower image. So it's that kind of a reversal going on. Yeah, it was fun.
And often the images in the color ones dance. They
Yeah.
dance. They dance around. It's really exciting. I forgot to mention something about the painting in the show. That was probably the most important piece of the information. Do we have a minute for me just to add a couple sentences?
I'll go back to you for sure, Barbara.
Okay. One of the reasons I love to do the pouring is that some years ago when I was doing collagraphs, I would put abstract pieces in to make shapes against the recognizable imagery. And later, after they were printed, they were suggestive of animals, birds. I found a bear, half a bear in one, and it was very exciting. I thought, oh, well, and so when I started again pouring the thin paints, I did watercolor for a long time, but not like the pouring paints really, in addition to the rest, really started in about 2014, 15. And what I found is that animals and other imagery appears, and it's not there when I leave, when I do the pouring and leave, but when I come back. Right. And so in the one that's in the May show called Two Birds, the bird shapes were there. Now, when I say mixed media, I took out some watercolor pencils and added a little bit of feathers and maybe a beak and an eye. And then I made there was kind of the tree shape on the side. So I took watercolor pencils and made the eggs I made a nest with eggs. And then there was something that looked like a snake coiled around next to the bird on the branch. But I didn't do too much with that. I just thought, don't go too far, just leave it mysterious. And so that's one of the exciting, it's a rare one where there isn't some animal. And so, or person or some recognizable image. And so that's part of the excitement. It isn't there when I pour it. It happens when I leave it to its own devices. And that's pretty exciting.
I love that. I love that. I think Birds at Dawn was the name of the piece. And I imagine you pouring this, going to bed, and then waking up to two birds at dawn looking at you. And just, good morning, Barbara.
We're here.
In your painting. Yeah.
There was one where it happened that I told Angela and several people that it freaked me out because it was too specific. But then when I kind of looked at it really carefully, I could see that I had already added a line here and an eye there, because otherwise it was too creepy, because it was an otter curved around a ball and a goose looking up at it. And it was, I thought, no, that's not going to come out of the paints by themselves. And it kind of was eerie, but I loved it, Dave.
So Lynda, I know that you had shared with me the piece that you're working on. So I'm going to share my screen so all our viewers can see the piece, and then you can tell us more about this piece, which is also, it's a color piece, so people will get to see your color work, and
Yeah.
you can talk to us more about what you're working on.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, there it is.
The piece that's in the show, the little piece, the charcoal piece is 9 by 12. And I think with matting and framed, it's about 14 by 17, something like that. It's fairly small. This one is 38 by 42. Maybe, no, I mean, 36 maybe by 42. So it's larger. And usually in my color work, I don't have black. This is Payne's gray, but it reads as black. And so this time, after my last show and the introduction of black in the small drawings, I decided to really focus on a really wide value range that would include this Payne's gray. I always like to have kind of a formal thing that I'm working with or studying in a show. So this will be sort of the formal aspect that I'm interested in my next show, which is October next year, or this year. No, next year, 21. So this, I'm really inspired by American quilts and quilt making as a women's craft and the patterns associated with quilt making. So in the last show, my last show, the paintings themselves were, the composition was derived from an American quilt piece. They were all the same in each piece, the composition, but the patterns were different. So in this piece, I just got a book of the quilters of Gee's Bend. Is it Gee's Bend? Is it Alabama or Alabama? And so it's a group of women who have for decades and decades made quilts. And they initially started making quilts out of old clothes like denim and the kinds of things that their husbands or sons would use when they were out in the cotton fields picking, or in other ways, other kinds of industry in this small, actually, they have become famous now. I don't know if have you heard of them? Either of you, the Gee's Bend quilt makers? Oh, you've got to look.
I love quilts. I love.
And so anyway, I bought the book. I had to get the book. They showed here in Portland at Elizabeth Leach Gallery. And so of the current types of quilts they're using now, they use different types of fabric. They're more colorful than they were before. But Elizabeth Leach has done a screen print edition of these quilts. So you can, anyway, so I bought the book, and oh my gosh, all of those beautiful quilts and composition was, I love the composition. They look just like, abstract paintings for the most part. And so this was taken, just the structure of if you remove the black images on top, that whole part was similar to one of the quilts underneath, the colored part with the structure. And I invented my own shapes and forms and colors. And then after seeing that, I decided it needed a little more, activity. It needed to be more lively. So I decided to use those images from my I have a lexicon, a dictionary basically of all these shapes and forms to spread them out over the top. And there you have it.
So are all the
We
shapes
don't
and
have a
forms,
title for it yet.
are all the shapes and forms different cells that you've seen under the microscope?
They're abstractions, simplifications.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, really simplifications of those shapes and forms. So I developed what I call a lexicon of these shapes. And with those shapes, then I can create patterns without having to, redo it. So I looked at uh, my image dictionary and decided which ones to use and let them kind of fly across the top.
Lovely.
I love
So,
the contrast of the blue gray and the Payne's gray, the dark, almost black.
all of the grays are Payne's gray. So the dark one at the top, or the dark surfaces on the top, are a Payne's gray, which is an acrylic. These are acrylic paints. Is an ultramarine and a black, ivory black mixed together. So then the bars are a Payne's gray tinted with white. And so I like that. I like that Payne's gray can be so versatile.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
The two-tone of it matches, coordinates very well.
thank you.
And then all the bright colors coming
Beautiful.
through, popping
Yeah.
through. It's gorgeous. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you for sharing with us. It's always fun to get a sneak peek to see what you
Yeah.
all are cooking up. So if you all would like to see more from Lynda and Barbara, we have our artist pages up there on our new website at www.blackfish.com, and you can see more works of theirs, and also you can see the rest of the show 30 by 30 that will go on for all of May. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. It's so good to see you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great to see you.
Thank you,
Are
Kristen.
we all locked in our homes, but for artists, I think everybody's just taking this as a artist in residency time. So
Great.
it's great to
Yes.
see what everybody's up to and share that with our audience on social media, because so many people who really love and admire what you do, and I think we all need art more than ever right now. And so thanks for sharing, and go check out Barbara and Lynda's work online. And leave a comment for Barbara and Lynda on Facebook when you see this.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.